Welcome back for another Battletech talk with me, Magical Hack. This week we're going to be starting on some lore videos, going for the most part century by century. However, the first little bit I'm probably going to combine, 2 or 3 centuries together, as right at the beginning of the timeline, there's not a lot that happens. So once again, welcome in, and I hope you enjoy the video that follows. So, up until about 1988, the the history and timeline of BattleTech is basically the same as the history of our real world. Where it differs is in 1988, that's actually when the Soviet Union collapses in the Battletech timeline and the first Cold War ends. Mikhail Gorbachev takes power, and the U.S. starts looking at space a little bit more seriously. Then in '94 is when we see the first conflict in space in the BattleTech universe, as a fist fight breaks out on the Salyut 8 space station. Fun fact: since in the real world there were only 7 Salyut modules, 8 is essentially kind of the BattleTech universe's version of the Mir space station. So that happens in '94. A few years later, some people within the Russian government decide that, they're not really too keen on this whole peace thing. Cold War saber rattling and nuclear posturing were the way to go. So they decide to overthrow the government and begin Cold War Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. That's about everything for the 20th century. Next, we're going to take a look at the 21st century. Now, in the 21st century, we had a little bit more that had happened. We at the in the year 2000, we see technology like the salvage arm and manipulator arm, which are generally used on industrial mechs and the like, created and developed. Now, as well, around 2000, not around, in 2005, the second Cold War ends, and there is a space station called Crippen Station put into low Earth orbit. This is important because a couple of years later, in 2007, it becomes essentially the central command hub for the Western Orbital Defense Network. Australia, a few years later, decides, you know what, we don't want to. You guys can decide your conflicts on your own. We're going to remain neutral. And also during that year, the first recorded murder happens off planet, with somebody being stabbed with fatally with a utility knife. Um, Now, the next year, we have some more shit happening in Russia, as the basically what happens is we have the Tinkov Accords, which were basically a joint agreement between the Soviet Union and the U.S. to, have free elections, liberal reforms, all that within the Warsaw Pact nations. And that was signed on Russia's behalf by Oleg Tikhonov, who is very shortly thereafter assassinated. I think it's like 4 days afterwards. That kicks off then the Second Soviet Civil War, Um, Within a couple of years, we see a battle in the Battle of Moscow, and everyone's favorite lawyer, Rudolph Giuliani, is inaugurated as president of the U.S. at that point. Fucking hilarious. Now, the very next year, Second Soviet Civil War ends. Um, Due to the actions of the U.S. and other nations who would eventually form the Western Alliance. Now, one of the big things that, like one of the big stepping stones for the technology in the Battletech universe happens right around this time as well. As Takeyoshi Fuchida leaves Kyoto University and starts working with Thomas Kearney on a prototype fusion reactor, which will eventually power basically all of the mechs that you will use within the game of BattleTech. So now the a lot more politics happens. We have the Western Alliance forming in 2015. So the Western Alliance is essentially a bunch of various Western powers merged with NATO and the European Common Market to form the Western Alliance. Now, do alrighty. So, and we're only 15 years into the 21st century as well with this. So after that, we have the Alliance Space Command being formed. This is basically something that was put up by the Western Alliance, and essentially tasked with, getting humanity into space, starting with a lunar station and then moving on to Mars. Pardon me. Um, and as soon as it was later in 2016, as soon as the Alliance Space Command finished their lunar base, they moved right in, out of Crippen Station, which was their HQ. Within a year of this happening, the first interplanetary transport, the AS Altair with Alliance Space, is launched, and the AS Procyon is sent to Mars. Now, that's awesome. We're getting to Mars, everything like that. The next year, figured out the issues and resolved all the problems with the prototype fusion reactor that they were making. It was taken over by a team from Harvard and MIT. Within about a month of that, while they were reviewing the reactor logs, Kearney and Fuchida, they found that some stuff was a little bit fucky. It wasn't quite following the accepted theories of physics. So they decided to do some unauthorized testing and realized that that mass could, when exposed to a specific energy state, exceed the speed of light. However, unfortunately, there were no reactors at the time that could provide enough power to actually make this happen. So what they started to do, the next year, is they started to put out some papers about this. The first one in 2019 titled Einstein's Theory Cooked and Raw. This was met with a wee bit of scorn, some scorn. But time moves on, and within the next year, we have the first the first full scale fusion reactor that is created. And then as well, there's some more papers that are being released. I believe Kearney and Fushida released about 4 throughout the rest of their academic career. Now, in the early 2020s, we do also see a lot of political saber rattling as well, conflict, things like that. We have the Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere is created, which is an alliance between China, Hong Kong Collective, and the combined Korean states, basically because they felt threatened by Japan being a part of the Western Alliance. So they decide to blockade Japan. It's a whole ordeal. By 2024, it's all kind of pushed under the rug as the Osaka Agreement is announced, and the nations of the Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere are let into the Western Alliance. Everything seems great, right? At this point, General Motors is patenting the first, the initial design of the fusion reactor. Yes, that General Motors, and it's great. We're now starting to see a little bit more focus on space travel and things like that. We have one of the first ships, interplanetary ships, that was created being refit with a fusion drive. In 2026, that is the AS Columbia, and the very next year, it is sent as well to Mars. With this, we see that space travel is a distinct possibility. It's something that is very feasible within our lifetimes. And you know what? It's at this point in 2028 that the Western Parliament, or Western Alliance Parliament, authorizes the Magellan program, which is basically a program to send out essentially unmanned drones to the closest star systems using fusion drives to try and get them, to see how popular, how easy it will be to colonize other systems. And it's then they move on this really, really quickly, like faster than they would in the real world. So the Magellan program is announced in 2028. The first probe, Magellan 1, is completed in 2029 and then launched in 2030. Now we have in the next really big thing that happens in 2050, Epsilon Eridani is discovered by the probe Magellan 4. And at this point, we've introduced and created infantry jump packs, which are something that you would see on battle armor and the like. In 2075 is when holovid and basically 3D video format is created. And then in 2082 is when we start sending out our first colonization projects. So we have some slow boat colonization projects that essentially, they're being sent out to colonize new systems that we find as potentially habitable. But this is before Kearney and Fuchida, their essentially their FTL theories are proven. So they're going to take a few decades to get where they are going. Within a few years after that, we have the Terran Alliance being formed. So the Terran Alliance is basically what happened when the Western Alliance pretty much took over Earth. Everybody was brought into the Western Alliance, and then they're like, you know what? Fuck this. We're not the Western Alliance anymore. We cover the whole globe. Terran Alliance, that's what we are. Ship it, send it. We're good. And then really for the most part, other than some issues in the third world, like basically the third world developing economic problems, mainly due to some of the Terran Alliance's policies and some internal conflict in regards to that, there's not a whole lot that happens in rather in the 21st century. Alrighty. I think I'm going to stop it here for today, folks. I definitely want to thank you all for taking the time to watch today. If you happen to like what you have heard today, don't hesitate. Drop a follow. Like, subscribe. I'm too used to doing the whole Twitch sign out. It's a thing. If you happen to want to hang out with me live, you can catch me over on Twitch at Magical Hack. Twitch.tv/magicalhack, obviously. I'm also on the Hell site, formerly known as Twitter, under @magicalhack. You can find me as Magical Hack on Blue Sky. And I'm, touring about and doing my thing on here as well on the YouTube, so you can also find me here. I want to thank you all once again for taking the time to watch today, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Cheers.